She doesn't chase the spotlight, and that's the first thing I noticed. Not because attention is bad, but because most people confuse visibility with value. They want to be seen before they've built anything worth seeing. She's the opposite. She's comfortable operating where there's no applause, no audience, no external validation feeding the moment. She doesn't post her effort. She doesn't narrate her sacrifices. When something works, she doesn't rush to claim it. When something fails, she doesn't look for someone else to absorb the blame. She just keeps moving, quietly, deliberately. That kind of restraint is rare in a world optimized for noise. What impressed me wasn't her lack of interest in fame, it was her immunity to it. Attention doesn't distort her priorities. Praise doesn't inflate her ego. Criticism doesn't derail her focus. She's not driven by how things look from the outside. She's driven by whether they actually hold up under pressure. That tells you everything you need to know about how someone is built. There's a certain calm that comes from not needing to be perceived. When you're not performing for approval, you think clearer, you decide better, you don't trade long-term stability for short-term applause. She understands that instinctively. No speech about it, no manifesto, just behavior. People like that don't stand out immediately. They're easy to overlook in loud rooms. But when things get real, when complexity increases, when pressure spikes, when stakes are no longer theoretical, they surface naturally, not because they demand space, but because they've earned it. She doesn't want to be admired, she wants things to work. Pressure changes people. You see it every time stakes rise. Some get louder, some get defensive, some disappear entirely. That's why pressure is useful. It strips away the performance and shows you what's actually underneath. And when it shows up for her, something interesting happens. She gets clearer. When things are calm, a lot of people look capable. When timelines compress, variables multiply, and failure becomes a real possibility, that's when the difference shows. She doesn't panic. She doesn't dramatize the moment. She slows things down just enough to see what actually matters. While others react, she prioritizes. I've watched her absorb complexity without being overwhelmed by it, not because she ignores the weight, but because she understands it. She doesn't waste energy complaining about how hard something is. She asks better questions. What's the real constraint? What actually breaks if this goes wrong? What can wait and what can't? That kind of thinking only shows up when someone is built for load, not comfort. What's striking is that she doesn't need control to stay steady. She doesn't try to dominate the room or force certainty where none exists. She's comfortable operating inside uncertainty, which is where all meaningful things actually get built. Pressure sharpens her focus instead of narrowing it. That's not toughness for show, it's internal discipline. The kind that comes from experience, from having been through hard things and learning how not to fracture under them. You can't fake that, you can't train it overnight. When the environment gets unforgiving, she doesn't ask for less pressure. She becomes the reason the pressure holds. There's a difference between carrying weight and carrying it loudly. A lot of people want credit just for holding responsibility. They want it acknowledged, labeled, rewarded in real time. She doesn't operate that way. She carries what needs to be carried because it needs to be carried. Full stop. What stands out is how little she needs recognition to stay committed. She doesn't keep score. She doesn't remind people what she's done or what she's absorbing so others don't have to. If something falls on her plate, she takes it seriously, not personally. That distinction matters. It keeps resentment from creeping in and clarity from slipping out. I've seen her take on pressure that no one assigned to her. Not because she wanted to be indispensable, because she saw a gap and understood the cost of leaving it open. That's not ambition, it's ownership. And ownership without an audience is rare. When things go right, she steps back. When things go wrong, she steps forward. There's no performance in that, no narrative building, just accountability, and accountability is quiet by nature. It doesn't announce itself, you only notice it when it's missing. What I respect most is that she doesn't confuse contribution with visibility. She understands that some of the most important work happens out of frame, where no one's clapping and no one's watching. That's where systems either stabilize or collapse. She's not trying to be impressive, she's trying to be reliable. And in environments where pressure is real and margins are thin, reliability isn't a trait, it's a requirement. She carries the weight without asking to be seen carrying it. Some people challenge you because they want to win. They want the room. They want the moment where their voice overpowers everyone else's. That's not how she operates. When she challenges something, it's not about dominance, it's about direction. She doesn't interrupt to prove she's smart. She waits until the idea is formed, until the assumptions are visible, and then she asks the one question that actually matters. Not to tear things down, but to make them stronger. There's no edge to it, no competition in the tone, just clarity. What makes that rare is restraint. She doesn't need to be right publicly to feel secure privately. She's not threatened by strong personalities or opposing views. She's focused on the outcome, not the optics. If she pushes back, it's because the trajectory is off, not because her ego needs exercise. I've watched her disagree without destabilizing the room. That's a skill most people don't have. They either stay silent and disengage, or they escalate and fracture trust. She does neither. She holds her ground without forcing others to lose theirs. And when she's wrong, and everyone is sometimes, she adjusts quickly. No defensiveness, no rewriting history, just course correction. That tells you the challenge was never about her position. It was about getting to the best answer. In high-pressure environments, competition is easy. Collaboration under tension is not. She chooses the harder path consistently, the one that builds alignment instead of scars. She doesn't compete for space, she protects the direction. Fast systems expose people. When things move quickly and break often, you find out who adds stability and who adds noise. She adds stability, not by slowing everything down, but by grounding it. In environments where urgency can turn into chaos, she becomes a reference point. Her calm isn't passive, it's intentional. She knows when to step in and when to let momentum run. She doesn't absorb panic from the room, and she doesn't amplify it either. That takes discipline, especially when everyone else is reacting in real time and mistakes allowed. I've seen teams burn out because intensity never had a counterbalance. Everything was acceleration, no orientation. She understands that speed without stability isn't progress, it's erosion. So she focuses on fundamentals. What actually needs attention right now? What's noise? What's being rushed just because everyone feels rushed? What's impressive is that she doesn't need perfect conditions to do this. Even when variables are changing and information is incomplete, she stays anchored. That steadiness gives other people permission to think clearly instead of defensively. It raises the floor of the whole system. She doesn't position herself as the center of calm. She just behaves calmly, consistently. Over time, that becomes contagious. Meetings shift, decisions get cleaner, fewer things have to be redone because they were rushed the first time. In unstable environments, people often mistake intensity for leadership. She knows better. Leadership is what keeps things from breaking when pressure peaks. It's what holds shape when everything else wants to bend. She doesn't fight the chaos. She gives it something solid to organize around. People ask why her. They expect a dramatic answer. Something about chemistry, timing, or some perfect alignment of traits. But the real reason is much simpler and much harder to find. When things get uncomfortable, she doesn't vanish. When pressure spikes and the room tightens, she doesn't outsource the weight. She stays engaged. Not loudly, not heroically, just steadily. And that consistency matters more than brilliance ever could. She's not flawless. That was never the requirement. What matters is how someone behaves when there's no playbook, when outcomes are uncertain, and when the cost of getting it wrong is real. In those moments, she doesn't look for exits. She looks for footing, and she plants herself there. I trust her not because she agrees with me, but because she thinks independently without fracturing alignment. I rely on her not because she's visible, but because she's present when it counts. She doesn't need ideal conditions to show up fully. She adapts without losing her center. That's the difference between someone impressive and someone essential. Impressiveness fades when circumstances change. Reliability compounds. Over time, it becomes the foundation everything else rests on. She understands that building anything meaningful isn't about avoiding pressure, it's about surviving it together. And when you find someone who can do that without needing applause, without needing control, without needing reassurance, you don't keep looking. Not because you settled, but because you've recognized what actually lasts. She's not built for fame. She's built for what comes after the noise, and that's why she's the one.